Honorable co-chairs, excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure and honor to be here at the second session of the Asia-Pacific Regional Review on the implementation of the Istanbul Program of Action in preparation for the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries. Let me begin by thanking His Excellency Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Government of Bangladesh, His Excellency Courtney Rattray, Under-Secretary General and High Representative of UN ORILS, and Her Excellency Armida Salshia Alice Jabana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of ISCAP, for inviting me to speak at this important session on climate, recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, building a resilient society against future shocks. The subject is a burning issue of the day that we must all be concerned about and willing to act on. Today, climate and the coronavirus pandemic are the two most important and critical crises that the world is grappling with. All around the world, people, communities, and countries are dealing with multiple shocks from climate and COVID-19 related impacts. No one is immune from these crises, but the least developed countries are certainly among the worst hit by each compounding shock. Countless lives and livelihoods have been affected, millions have lost jobs, and economies have come to a standstill. COVID-19 pandemic has become a threat multiplier to climate change. With such scenarios, we will be stuck in an endless cycle of recovery and reconstruction. It derails the substantial gains made towards socio-economic development of our countries and livelihoods of our communities. The vulnerable countries will continue to be trapped in the vicious cycle of poverty, undermining the sustainable development goals. Therefore, building a resilient society against future shocks is a very important milestone that we must all strive to achieve. The LDCs have launched our vision to be on climate resilient development pathways by 2030 and deliver net zero emissions by 2050 to ensure our societies and ecosystems thrive. At the UN Climate Summit in 2019, hosted under the leadership of UN Secretary General, the LDC 5 program must lead towards achieving this vision and milestones. Climate change is only getting worse. The science tells us that to achieve the Paris Agreement goal of limiting the global warming to 1.5 degree, global emissions need to be halved by 2030, and the world must achieve net zero by 2050. Science has warned us that the latest IPCC report is a reconfirmation of the 1.5 degree special report. This is an alarm bell that we must all respect, listen to, and act on. The coronavirus pandemic has taught us what happens when we do not listen to science. The climate crisis will be far worse as we are working against nature despite the warnings. But currently, we are not on track. We are not listening. In fact, we are grossly off track. With current policies, we are leading towards warming of 3 degrees or more by end of this century. Already, even at 1 degree of warming, the impacts are devastating. Every year, across the LDCs, we are grappling with cyclones, floods, unusually heavy rains, landslides, and droughts. For the Asia-Pacific region, the assessment carried out by International Center for Integrated Mountain and Development based in Nepal tells us that Hindu Kush Himalayan glaciers will melt by 1/3 even if the global temperature rise is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And in such a scenario, the warming will likely be at least 0.3 degree higher in the Hindu Kush Himalaya and at least 0.7 degree higher in the Northwest Himalaya and Karakoram. The report on the inventory of these glaciers from the region shows that many of these glaciers are considered large enough to cause serious damage downstreams once they burst out. This means millions of our people who rely on these glaciers for drinking water, sanitation, agriculture, and hydropower will be exposed to climate-induced calamities such as floods, landslides, droughts, heat waves, tropical cyclones, irreversible biodiversity loss, and many more. These upstream devastations will impact downstream fellow colleagues in the Pacific, leading to sea level rise. In the next few decades, we may not see many of our fellow Pacific countries. The entire island might get wiped out. Therefore, we cannot stay complacent. We must act now, and what needs to be acted must be reflected in the LDC 5 so that collectively we can address. Climate change and COVID-19 issues cannot be resolved in silos. We need global solidarity and cooperation. For LDCs, priorities must be to improve the abilities of our communities to adapt to the effects of climate change, build resilience to climate and other shocks, and reduce vulnerability. Inadequate capacity and accessing finance are perennial issues for the LDCs. We must find ways to strengthen institutions and enhance capacity at national and local levels. We have had very good lessons from COVID-19 pandemics that business as usual is not working, and there is tremendous window of opportunity for transformative green recoveries to build back better, to deliver stronger climate sustainability, health, and economic outcomes. Digitization and innovative technologies have a major role to play for greening the socio-economic development of our countries. For now, what we need is a green economic stimulus packages to address both health and climate risk by adopting clear science-based pathways to reach net zero emissions by 2050 that deliver better outcomes both for economies and the environment. But we know that we cannot address this in silos. The impacts are far-reaching and the solutions must be all-encompassing. Reaching a consensus towards a common goal is an opportunity to lead us towards this vision. Therefore, I wish you a fruitful discussion in deepening understanding on issues related to Asia and Pacific LDCs and exploring innovative areas for mutual benefits to pursue the goal of building a resilient society, ecosystem, and economies. Thank you, and Tashi Dilek.